scattered discards were punctuated by an occasional old man or woman, shrilly insistent to be left behind so that a family might live. Such telltales were all too familiar to a knight whose own demesne suffered this very same fate not so long ago. People, my tenants, villagers and farmers, who counted on my brothers and me to protect them, cut down like wheat or else scattered to the wind. These fugitives were a grimy lot, as clouds of dust hovered in both winding directions along the bone-dry road. In a bone-dry land, he pondered, rising on his stirrups to scan every unfamiliar horizon. This hilly countryside wasn't exactly a desert. Kurt had seen the real thing, guarding a Genoese diplomatic mission to Egypt, almost a decade ago. Here, trees and shrubs dotted every slope. Indeed, some distance below, through a southern haze, he could make out green and fertile fields. At least I think that's south. And far beyond, the shoreline of some lake or small sea. Still, the scouts had not been drunk or lying. This was clearly not the green forest or dampness of central Germany. Nor were these Germans, shambling below on open-toed sandals. Both women and men wore robe-like garments and cloth headdresses, scarves or turbans. It was rare to spot exposed hair except among the weary-looking children. Now some of the more alert refugees appeared to take notice, pointing uphill toward Kurt and his men, 20 Landsknecht cavalry in battered helmets and cuirasses, with 24 pikemen and 10 arquebusiers marching up from behind. Murmurs of worry arose from the dusty migrants. Not that Kurt could blame them. His own company of mercenary guardsmen had a pretty clean record, protecting merchants through the hellscape that recently stretched from Alps to Baltic. But no civilian who still had any grip upon reality would be placid at the sight of armed and armored men. "What's that language they're gabbling?" complained the young adventurer, Samuel Burns, from his oversized charger to Kurt's left. The Hollander's sergeant, Lucas Kaupers, shrugged broad shoulders, looking to his commander for orders. Kurt listened carefully for a moment. "It sounds a bit like Hebrew or Arabic, and neither. Perhaps something in between. I can't speak either of them well enough to tell. You'd better send a rider back to fetch Father Brown." "Hebrew? So many Jews?" Burns shook his head. "Brown won't want to come," Sergeant Kaupers said. "The villagers are terrified, since we all pass through the mouth of hell." A good name for it, Kurt thought. Just over an hour ago it had seemed that Milda and its surroundings were indeed being swallowed by some fiery gullet, amid a shaking noise and painful brilliance that just had to be infernal. "They think that it's the end time," Kaupers went on, in thickly accented Low German. "Especially after hearing what happened to Magdeburg. Half of the peasants seem bent on setting fire to their hovels, then throwing themselves on the flames." Kurt shrugged. It was all right for the sergeant to raise a point, but a commander's silence should speak for itself. And so, with hardly a pause, Kaupers turned in his saddle to shout for a courier. 2, since one horse would be needed to bring the priest, if the Jesuit was wanted in such a hurry. "Good," Kurt nodded. "A sergeant who thinks is worth his weight in coppers, maybe even silver." Watching the riders depart, he only half listened as Kaupers began shouting at the infantry, arraying them in some kind of presentable order. Of course, the pikemen and arquebusiers weren't part of Kurt's Landsknecht company, which had only been passing through Milda, escorting a small commercial caravan, when the calamity struck. These footmen were a motley assortment of local militia and grizzled veterans, augmented by deserters from both Tilly's Catholic army and Protestant Magdeburgers fleeing the atrocities to Milda's north. That siege, according to the breathless reports, had come to an end as forces of the Austrian Emperor and the Roman Church performed a feat of butchery surpassing the massacre of Cathars at Béziers in 1209. Perhaps even matching horror stories from the Crusades. Hell's mouth indeed. What more do we deserve for allowing such things to happen, and murderers to enrich themselves? The new infantry recruits seemed grateful to have found employment with Kurt's company, not the richest guard unit by any means, but one that...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.